Hey everyone, this is Zihking and today I'll show you some basic concepts for understanding music. Let's get rolling. What is music? Well, my personal definition for music is the use of sounds to create art. Art. But it can be broken down with science and math. Don't let that scare you. It might sound complicated, but I'll break it down so that you can understand the basics of it. This is a key, but we're not talking about this key. We're talking about the key in music. No, key in music. Think of the key as a rule that governs which notes should be played. What are notes? Notes are letters in English that represent a sound. There's a letter to represent that sound or a note to represent that sound. The musical alphabet is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. However, there are 12 notes in music. So what about the other 5? Okay, so let's use the keyboard to explain this. This is called a C. This is D, E, F, G, A, B, and it repeats C. Right? These black notes, there are 5 of them. They have 2 names, but we'll talk about that later. Here are the 12 notes. And it repeats along the keyboard. There's a next term called pitch. And we're not talking about the cricket pitch. Pitch is how high or low a sound sounds. So remember, 12 notes and they're repeated. That means you can find this note, which is called a C here. You can find a C at a higher pitch, a C at an even higher pitch, a C at a lower pitch, an even lower pitch. Those are all C's, different pitch. Alright, imagine this. You're watching Rising Stars or The Voice. In Jamaica, we have Rising Stars. And there's a contestant that is going to perform Bob Marley, One Love. During the performance, at some point in time, you cringe like, that sound off. It sound off key. What is this key? And how do you know it's off key? Well, think of the key as a rule that governs what should be played, what should be sung, what should be whatever. And this rule, if you step outside of this boundary, it's going to sound off. It's going to sound weird. It's going to sound off key. We said this a lot, but let me break it down for you. Bob Marley's song is in the key of C major. What is C major? We'll explain that later. Just remember that there's a key for each of the 12 notes in Western music. So there's a key for C, D, E, F, G, A, B. There's a key for all of them. And the black notes too. Let's talk about that C major. That C major actually states that you can only play these 7 notes. Right? And there's a formula to find out each of the different boundaries and parameter. But in the case of C major, it's stating that you can only play C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So basically you can't touch any of the black keys. If you touch any of the black keys, it will sound off key. And that's how it works. There are many songs in different keys and each key states that you can only play a certain 7 notes. 7 specific notes. There's a formula for this and we'll work it out later. But in the case of C major, you only can play the white keys on the keyboard. If you touch any of the black keys, it will sound off. Off key. So in the case of One Love by Bob Marley, it's in the key of C major. So you can only press the white keys. I can't use Bob Marley's song for copyright reasons, but I'll use a song that's also in the key of C major and demonstrate how I stay on key and it sounds pleasant once you're on key, but the moment you go outside of those 7 notes, it will definitely sound off key. So I will demonstrate this by playing one of my beats that's also in the key of C major. Remember, in C major you can only press the 7 white notes. C, E, F, G, A, B, C, and it repeats. Now watch this. I'm playing random notes, however, it still sounds on key. Now watch this. I'm going to play the black notes. Sounds off, doesn't it? Watch this. But once I play the white notes, I'm on key now. So that's the key of a song. It's a rule that governs which notes should be played. And it's normally 7, alright? And we have keys that represent each of the notes on the keyboard. Understood? Hopefully. Do you remember me mentioning something about a formula to find the key? How do you find those 7 specific notes out of the 12? And there's a key for each of the 12 notes. How do we find the key for each of the 12 notes? Well, this formula is called a scale. What is a scale? Think of scale as a series of notes that are spaced at specific distances. And these distances are called an interval. Now, you only need to know 2 intervals to understand scales. For now, just the basics. Think of it. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's a scale, and that's a major scale. I mentioned intervals before. Interval is the distance between each note. Now, have a look at this. This is how we progress through notes on the keyboard. Right? That being said, this C, the closest note to this C is not this D. It's actually the black key here. The distance between this and the black key is called a semitone, and that's the smallest interval because it's right beside each other, so the distance is like so. Semitone. If you skip a note, it's called a tone or a whole tone. So from here to here is a whole tone. From here to here is a semitone. Now look at this key right here. The key beside it, directly beside it, is actually this. So that's a semitone. From this to this is a semitone. However, if I jump from this to this, I skip a note. I skip this white note here. So it's actually a tone to move from here to here. Now it's about this tone and semitone thing. Now this is important for you to understand the formula for a major scale. The formula for a major scale is T, T, S, T, 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 S. Right? The T stands for tone and the S stands for semitone. Now, how do we apply the formula? If we want to find the C major scale or the key of C, we first find C on the keyboard. And then we apply the formula. So we'll find the note first, then apply the formula. C, remember, T, T, S, T, 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 S. You pick the note, then you apply the formula. So in this case, C, count a tone up. So we skip this and we end up here. So that's 1 T so far. You get the next T. Move from this note, skip a note, find the next one. So that's the second T. Now for the S, which is a semitone, you'll find the next note beside it because it's a semitone. In this case, it's this. Then we go for next T. You have to skip a note, so we're going to skip this black note. Remember, the black note is the closest note to this white key here. Alright? So we're going to skip this note and move up. Now that's an XT. Need an XT. An XT. Remember, we are skipping notes every time we use the T. And then the final letter is actually an S. And it brings us back to C. So you find the note, then you apply the formula. So in this case, it's C. So watch this. T, T, S, T, 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 S, which brings us back to C. Remember, we can apply this formula for every note on the keyboard. So we can pick a random note. In this case, let's pick G. On the keyboard, this is a G. So we'll apply the formula now. T, skip one note, skip one more, T. Then we go by S, which is this note right beside it. Then we go by a T, T, T. Realize, skip this note right beside it and we go up here for a T. And then finally S, which brings us back to G. Right? So let's determine the names of the black notes. The name of the black note is dependent on the note that it's beside. Remember, they have two names. This black note is beside C and it's also beside D. If you're moving from D to this, we can call it a D flat. Flat. Flat, yeah, there's a B symbol that represents you moving down by a semitone. Remember, semitone is the note directly beside the note in question. So in this case, it's a D. And if we move down a semitone, we get D flat. If we're moving from C, we can call it a C sharp because we are moving up one semitone. And that sharp is represented by a pound sign or a number sign or a hashtag. This is called a C sharp and it's also called a D flat. Now for this one, it's surrounded by a D and E. It can be called a D sharp because you're moving up from the D, and it can be called an E flat because you're moving down a semitone, you're flattening the E, and if you move up the semitone, you're sharpening the note. This one is called F sharp or G flat. Why? Because this is a G and this is an F. If you move up from the F, F sharp. If you move down from the G, it's a G flat. This is called a G sharp or A flat. And this one is called a B flat or A sharp. So they all have two names and it's dependent on which note you're coming from or going to. You can call them either. In the general sense, you can call them anything. But in the sense of a scale, when we're talking about scale, we have to move up alphabetically. So in the case of G major, we have G, A, B, C, D, E, and we have a black note here. Now what would we call this black note? We are coming from an E. We can't call it a G flat because you can't jump from an E to a G. You have to go through a F first. So E, we'll call it a F sharp in this case, and then it brings us back to G. In the case of a G major scale, we'll call it a F sharp. Understood? Now let's pick some black keys. We have this black key here. Now, we're going to create a scale or find the key based on that black note. What do we call it? If you work it out, you realize that it's best to call it E flat because it progresses alphabetically if you choose E flat. Now watch this. E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. So you realize it progresses alphabetically. So in this case, the black notes had the name of a flat instead of the name of a sharp. So hopefully you understand that now. So today we spoke about a key, which is the rule that governs which notes should be played. Talk about the definition of what's a note, which is a letter that represents a sound, right? Talk about the scale, which is the formula to find the key. And we know that there's a key for every one of the 12 notes in music. There are many keys and there are many scales, but the mother of them all is a major scale. A lot of scales and keys are derived from the major scale. The formula for the major scale is TTS, TTTS. And also, the black keys have two names, and the names are dependent on how it's used in a scale or whatever. So that's actually it for key and scales, the basic bare minimum for keys and scales. If you have any questions or you want me to cover other topics, then you can always reach out in the comment section and tell me what you want to talk about. I'll cover it, I'll do the research, I'll get the information for you. I'll give my own personal understanding, hopefully to simplify it so that you can understand it. Next video, I'll talk about rhythm, timing, and so forth. So subscribe, click the bell icon, and look out for that video. And people, big up on yourself 5 million times. I'm out.